What is going on, everybody? My name is Keggernaut, but just call me Keg, and patch 7.15 is finally here for World of Warcraft, and that means that there is a lot of new class changes and spec changes for almost every single thing in World of Warcraft, and that means that there is going to be a new Brewmaster guide, that is exactly what this video is today. So I'm going to teach you guys how exactly to play Brewmaster in patch 7.15. There's new talent changes, new legendary changes, things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this guide up into sections. There's going to be things on the screen right now that you guys can click, and there's also going to be timestamps down below for people on mobile if you guys want to look at that as well. There's going to be rotations, stat priorities, gearing, things like that. So you guys can check that out. I'll leave those for a couple of seconds and we'll get into it right now. Okay, so let's get into our spells and abilities. All right, so Tiger Palm. Basically, how we're going to run with this talent, with this ability, is it's going to cost 25 energy. It's going to do some damage for single target, and it's going to reduce the cooldown of all of our brews by 1 second. That's Purifying Brew, Iron Skin Brew, Fortifying Brew, and Black Ox Brew. It's going to reduce those cooldowns by 1 second. The main way that we're going to use Tiger Palm, though, is to make sure that we don't cap out on 100 energy. Sitting at 100 energy is not a good thing, guys. So you're going to want to make sure that you use Tiger Palm so that you avoid getting that 100 energy cap and wasting that energy. So that's how we're going to use Tiger Palm. Keg Smash is our next ability, and it's our hardest hitting ability. It's going to cost you 40 energy, so you're going to want to make sure that you have enough energy for this. And it's going to do a ton of damage. It's going to do a debuff on the targets that are affected with a 50% movement speed reduction, and it's going to make them prone to the debuff that Breath of Fire can cause. But basically how we're going to be using Keg Smash is we're going to use it on cooldown, guys, because also, if I didn't mention it, this is going to reduce the cooldown of all of our brews by 4 seconds. That's Purifying Brew, Iron Skin Brew, Fortifying Brew, and Black Ox Brew by 4 seconds. So we're going to make sure that we use this on cooldown. It is super, super important. Breath of Fire, what we're going to be doing is we're going to press this on cooldown as well, as long as the targets are affected with a Keg Smash debuff. Breath of Fire is a conal AoE fire damage ability that is going to do fire damage up front, and then if they are affected by the debuff from Keg Smash, they're going to be burning for, I believe it's 8 seconds, and they're going to just be doing fire damage to them, basically. But we want to keep this on cooldown and maintain that debuff on our enemies as long as possible, because with our artifact traits, we can reduce our damage taken as long as they have this Breath of Fire debuff. Baseline, it's up to 6%, but if you add some relics, it can go higher and higher. So this is very important that you want to press on cooldown and make sure you can keep that debuff up as long as possible. Stagger is Brewmaster's unique way of dealing with damage. It's what makes them a tank, and it's what makes them such a strong tank. So baseline, monks have 40% stagger. When they use Iron Skin Brew, they get an extra 40% stagger, but we'll get to that later. So stagger being at 40% baseline means that we're going to take some damage up front, and the rest of it is going to be as a dot that ticks every 1 second for 10 seconds. All right, so to put some math on the screen now, if we get hit with an ability that does 1 million damage and we're sitting at 40% stagger, right? So something like an Odin Spear, let's say, that does 1 million damage and we're at 40% stagger, that means that 40% of that 1 million damage is going to go to us as a dot that ticks every second over 10 seconds. And then the remaining 60% is going to be dealt to us immediately to our health bar. So that means that we're going to get 400k as a dot that ticks once per second for 10 seconds, and then the remaining 600k is going to be dealt immediately to our health bar, and that's what makes us so powerful. With Iron Skin Brew, we're going to want to use this as much as possible. It's very easy, guys, to maintain 100% uptime of Iron Skin Brew, and I'll show you guys, and there's also videos on my channel of easy 100% uptime on Iron Skin Brew. We're going to want to keep this not on cooldown, but we're going to want to keep the buff of this up as long as we can, right? This is going to increase the amount that we can stagger by an extra 40%. So if you can keep this 100% up in combat, that means that you're going to have 80% stagger the entire time. So every attack that hits you, besides magical attacks, every physical attack that hits you, you're going to be reducing it by 80%. And then the rest of that 80% is a dot. It's not reduced, but it's delayed as a dot over 10 seconds. 20% of the damage that you take is going to be affected directly to your health bar. That's what makes Brewmaster so powerful. So we're going to want to juggle our Iron Skin Brew and Purifying Brew because both of these share a cooldown. Iron Skin Brew, like I already mentioned, is going to increase the amount of damage that we can stagger by an additional 40%. Purifying Brew is actually going to remove 50% of that stagger just immediately. It's going to delete that damage. Purifying Brew is exactly how we reduce damage taken as a Brewmaster. But as a Brewmaster, the main thing of how we tank is to delay damage. So it's much more important to have Iron Skin Brew up than to actually purify. And with more experience, and as you guys get comfortable with tanking as a Brewmaster, you'll start to learn that you actually do not have to purify often at all. Sometimes I would only purify maybe like 3 times in a dungeon, maybe, and that's just because the healer can't keep up with the damage intake. But Purifying Brew is how we reduce damage taken. Purifying Brew and Iron Skin Brew both share a cooldown, and they both share a charge system. 3 charges to be exact. So every time you use an Iron Skin Brew, that reduces the amount of times that you can use Purifying Brew. Same thing with Purifying Brew. If you use Purifying Brew, it reduces the amount of time that you can use Iron Skin Brew. So we're going to want to reduce that time with Keg Smash and Tiger Palm. This is how we can get these back and use them as often as possible. Alright, so time to move on to the spell book and the rest of the spells. Anything that has a talent here, I'm just going to ignore and leave for the talent section, but I'm going to talk about mostly everything else. So Blackout Strike, this is just a high damaging single target attack that is about a 3-second cooldown. You're going to want to use this on cooldown because it's going to reduce the next auto attack of the enemy that you hit with this by 6%, and that can be increased with relics as well. Basically, just keep this on cooldown, guys, but make sure that you respect the priority. You're going to want to use Keg Smash and Breath of Fire first before you use Blackout Strike. But with Blackout Combo, this will change, and I'll get to that later. So I already talked about Breath of Fire. Crackling Jade Lightning. This is a channeled single target ability. It's a ranged attack with a 40-yard range. Basically, what you're going to want to do with this is you can pull mobs that are at a distance. It's not good for regaining aggro on mobs because it doesn't do that much damage. But what you can do is if you're fighting a pack of mobs, right, and you want to go and pull the next pack ahead of you, then instead of running all the way over there and grabbing them, what you can do is just Crackling Jade Lightning one of them, and they can all start to pull towards you because you've aggroed them. That's a really nice way to use Crackling Jade Lightning. It's one of the only ways I've used Crackling Jade Lightning. Detox is our Dispel. It only removes poison and disease effects from you or from the target, so you really can't use it on a lot of things because a lot of things are magical debuffs. But nonetheless, if you guys can find some good examples to use this, then obviously it's worth using and trying to help out your healer. Effuse is a single target spell that heals you or a friendly or whoever you're targeting. It's not that great. You're not ever going to use it in combat, so don't worry about it too much. Expel Harm is definitely an interesting ability. It's going to cost you 15 energy, and as you're fighting, you're going to be spawning Gift of the Ox orbs, right? And you can run over these orbs and they'll heal you, and you can start to accumulate a lot of them if you don't run over them all the time. So what Expel Harm can do is instead of having to reposition the boss and everything to go pick up those orbs manually by walking over them, you can just press Expel Harm and it's going to suck them all up in one giant big glorious heal. And it's going to do around 10% of the amount healed. It's going to do 10% of that healing as damage to the nearest enemy. It's not that much healing, so you don't have to worry about it's not that much damage, my bad. So you don't have to worry about the damage component of it too much, but the healing is very substantial. If you can rack up like 3, 4, 5, or even more orbs, is a very interesting ability. So you don't have to run around all over the place to try and get those Ox orbs. Exploding Keg is our artifact ability. It's a 40-yard range, it's an AoE target on the ground, and it's a 1.25-minute cooldown. You're going to just basically throw a keg at the floor. It's going to do a ton of fire damage, and it's going to put a debuff on all of the targets that get hit that is going to blind them for 3 seconds. So all of their auto attacks, they will not hit you. They will not hit friendly targets. They will not do anything. They just completely miss. It's the same thing as them missing you and also you dodging an attack. It's almost the same thing. So this is really, 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 really powerful. It's only 3 seconds. It doesn't seem like a lot, but trust me, when things like Necrotic start to go into your regular daily play style, Necrotic is very, very easy to just cheese with Exploding Keg. Some boss abilities even you can cheese with Exploding Keg by having them actually miss the attack. And also this really goes exponential in value the more mobs that are there, because you're just going to reduce more damage overall. So you're going to want to use this when there's a lot of mobs and you don't want to take that damage, or when there's a lot of mobs that start to attack a lot faster, then you can start to mitigate that damage as well. Fortifying Brew is our main big shield wall type of cooldown. It's a 7-minute cooldown, but that is reduced with Keg Smash and Tiger Palm, so don't worry too much about that 7-minute cooldown. But basically, it turns your skin to stone for 15 seconds, increasing your current and maximum health by 20%, so you can use this as a slight heal for 20%, obviously, increasing the damage you delay with Stagger by an additional 26%, and reducing all damage you take by 20%. So this is a big bad cooldown. You're going to want to use this if you just simply do not want to die, because in almost every single situation, if you have Fortifying Brew active, you're just not dying. It's just not going to happen, right? So basically use that as like, you know, oh my god, I'm about to die. You can use it that way, or you can use it preemptively in order to make sure that you don't die from big boss hits, or if there's a bunch of ads that spawn, you can use Fortifying Brew that way. Healing Elixirs is a talent. Iron Skin Brew I talked about. Keg Smash I talked about. Leg Sweep is a talent. Paralysis. This is a nice CC ability. You can only CC one target for up to 1 minute. It's really nice for Mythic Plus dungeons and other things like that. It can act as an interrupt if they can be stunned. So you can use Paralysis as an extra interrupt if you guys don't need one, or if you guys don't have one, my bad. Provoke is your taunt. Basically, if you need aggro on an enemy, you just taunt it. Resuscitate is your revive. This can only be used out of combat and only on one target, so not too much to say about that. Roll is our main way to move around the battlefield. Much like how a mage blinks and a warrior charges, roll does the same thing. It rolls in any direction. It rolls, I think it's 15 or 20 yards. Really easy to use, no problem. Spear Hand Strike is our interrupt. 15-second cooldown. It's just going to interrupt the cast time of whatever it is that you're targeting, as long as it can be interrupted. Some spells cannot be interrupted. Spear Hand Strike will do exactly what it says. Tiger Palm I talked about. Transcendence. What you can do is you can actually put a Transcendence Spirit down. So you put the spirit down, you can walk away from it, right? And then use Transcendence Transfer, and then you teleport back to that location and basically swap places with your spirit. Zen Flight is a glyph. Zen Meditation is another cooldown that we have, and is a channeled ability. It's a 5-minute cooldown. This can be reduced with a legendary, and what it is, it's going to reduce all damage taken by 60% for 8 seconds. Moving, being hit by a melee attack, or taking another action will cancel this effect. So basically, when you use Zen Meditation, you have to stand perfectly still and not cast anything else. And you're going to be casting it for 8 seconds. As long as you do not get hit by a melee attack during those 8 seconds, you will be reducing the damage by 60%. But this can also be used to cheese certain boss attacks. So for instance, if there's a big giant raking claws from Elareth Renfarrell in Emerald Nightmare, you can use Zen Meditation to reduce the attack by 60%. And it's only one hit. It's a melee hit, so it's going to cancel the effect, but you'll still have that 60% reduction for that one attack. So this is pretty good. Celestial Fortune is our passive. This is what works with crit. So you have a chance equal to your critical strike chance to be healed for an additional 65% of the amount healed. So if we get healed for 100k, right, we have a chance equal to our crit to be healed for an extra 65k, right? That's pretty simple, you know, pretty easy to understand. It works on all sorts of hots, all sorts of everything. Really easy. Gift of the Ox. So when we take damage, we have a chance to summon a healing sphere. This is not a chance to summon a healing sphere. Every time you take your health bar in damage, and that's unmitigated, that's through armor, that's through like everything. If you take 4.4 million HP, that's what I have right now. If I take 4.4 million HP in damage, right, then I'm going to spawn an Ox Orb, right? Also, with an artifact trait, at 35% health, you will spawn an Ox Orb automatically. But what these do is they heal you, basically, and you can just accumulate a bunch of these and then walk over them, or use Expel Harm to heal you. This is really nice. Our Mastery is Elusive Brawler. Each time you're hit by a melee attack, you gain a stacking % of increased dodge chance until your next successful dodge. This is also going to increase your attack power. So basically how this works is we're going to get hit by a melee attack, right? And if we get hit by that melee attack, we're going to get a stacking buff that is going to increase our dodge. So right now I have 31% dodge. If I get hit by another attack, that's going to increase by another 31%. And another 31%. As long as I keep getting hit by melee attacks, it's going to keep going high until I successfully dodge. Once I do finally dodge, then that is going to be reset back to 0, and then it's just going to keep accumulating as I get hit more and more. And Stagger I've already talked about. Alright, so on to the talent section. Basically, a lot of these talents you can just run with what you want, but other talents are more integral to our playstyle, and others are just better in different situations. So for row 15, this is the healing row. Chi Wave, just don't run with it. It's not that good. It's not really performing that well. Eye of the Tiger is very good for single target, and Chi Burst is very good for AoE. That's all you really have to know about this tier. Eye of the Tiger is passive, and it's single target a lot better. And then Chi Burst is active. You actually have to press this ability, but is a lot better for AoE damage and healing. Row 30, really just run with whatever you want on this row. A lot of people like Chi Torpedo and Tiger's Lust. Not everybody likes Celerity. I prefer Tiger's Lust over Chi Torpedo, but I could definitely see the benefits of Chi Torpedo, especially for things like Necrotic, but really just run with whatever you want on this row. It does not matter. Row 45, Gift of the Mists. Gift of the Ox has an up to 75% increased chance to trigger based on your missing health. This was actually just buffed with patch 715. However, it's still not performing that well. It's good for soloing world content, for soloing old raids and old dungeons, just because it's more healing. But for the most part, brews are too integral to our damage mitigation and things like that, where we'd rather be running with the other two talents than Gift of the Mist, because Gift of the Mist does not provide any sort of extra brews for us, so we usually just neglect this. Light Brewing, this is a really good talent for brand new, like literally brand new brewmasters that have never run with this class at all. It's okay to use Light Brewing if that's your situation, because you're just trying to get used to how this tank actually works. So what Light Brewing does, reduces the cooldown of Iron Skin Brew and Purifying Brew by 3 seconds, and it increases the maximum number of charges by 1. So you're going to have 4 charges total, and you're going to have a 3-second cooldown, so it's slightly less. This is okay for the new brewmasters, like I said, because it's just a little bit of a safety net. But in most cases, and literally actually in all cases, Black Ox Brew is definitely the talent to go for. The sooner that you can get better using Black Ox Brew, the better your playstyle is going to be, because it's a 1.5 minute cooldown, and you're going to drink this brew, and it's going to instantly refill your energy and your Iron Skin and Purifying Brew charges. So how you're going to want to use this, you're going to want to drink this brew when you have no charges of brews left, right? And then you're just going to get another 3 right away. It's really good. This is integral, guys, to keeping up Iron Skin Brew 100% of the time. It can be done without it, because I have done it many times. It can be done, but it's very, very hard to do. Black Ox Brew makes it so much easier, you do not even have to think, right? And I'll show you guys how to use this in the rotation section. So, row 60, Leg Sweep is almost by default the king of this row. A 5-yard, 5-second stun is just too powerful to pass up, especially in dungeons. Although in some dungeons, Black Ox Statue does a lot better, but also in raids, Leg Sweep isn't really used as much, so Black Ox Statue, that's where this comes in. Basically, you put a statue on the ground, right, and it pulses out aggro in a 30-yard radius. So all enemies within 30 yards are going to be basically taunted by the statue, and they're going to start attacking the statue. Other people, if they're doing a lot of damage, can pull off of this because it's not actually taunting, it's just pulsing aggro. But what you can do is you can target the statue and taunt it, and it's going to do an AoE taunt, and all of the mobs that are attacking this, or actually just all mobs within the 30-yard radius, are going to be attacking you instead. And that is really good for AoE pickup. It's really good for certain boss mechanics in raids, and it's also pretty good for Skittish, the Mythic Plus affixes. It's just really good for, making sure that it doesn't affect any other players. Just really, guys, it's good, but Leg Sweep usually is better. Ring of Peace just got a buff in 715 to its utility. Form a Ring of Peace at the target location for 8 seconds. Enemies that enter this will be ejected from the ring. So really, this is just an area of denial tool. So you place this on the ground, and enemies, I don't think bosses, but any other enemies will just be knocked out of the ring, basically, and they cannot enter that area. So what you can do is, for instance, the first little part with all the panthers in Darkheart Thicket, when they're jumping on your friendly targets, you can just put a Ring of Peace. As long as they're standing within the ring, I'm pretty sure they cannot actually get into it, so they'll just be knocked out, and the pounce just is basically negated. That's a really good way to use it. It's probably not going to be used as much because a hard stun is much better than Ring of Peace, and the statue is a lot better than the Ring of Peace as well, but we'll see. This needs more experimentation. Row 75, Healing Elixirs is a very solid, very, very, very solid heal. It's 2 charges with a 30-second recharge. You're going to drink an elixir healing you for 15% of your maximum health. And then also, when you get to 35% health, it's automatically going to consume a charge if there is one available. This is a really nice for just increasing your smoothness of your health bar. You can just look after yourself a little bit more. Also, it's a safety net. So if your healers take a dive, for instance, and they just cannot heal you, then healing elixirs can, be a safety net for you. Also, if you take a gigantic hit, get below 35% health, then it'll just automatically consume the charge and bring you back up. Mystic Vitality is the new talent that was brought in with 715. This replaces Diffuse Magic, and basically it's going to increase the effectiveness of stagger by 40% against magical attacks. So if you have that 40% stagger, you're going to reduce your damage by 40%, and it's going to delay onto a dot physical damage, but magical damage is basically at 20% effectiveness. So with this is going to increase. There's a chart on the screen right now which basically does the rundown of how this works. So if you understand how the stagger mechanic works, then this chart is actually going to make it very easy for you guys to understand how Mystic Vitality plays into our stagger for magical damage. This is good for consistent magical damage. Very, very big bursting magical damage, like a giant breath attack from a dragon, probably is going to be better with Dampen Harm. So what Dampen Harm does, this got a very, very big buff with 715. It's a 2-minute cooldown. It's going to reduce all damage you take by 20% to 50% for 10 seconds, with larger attacks being reduced by more. I don't think anybody really knows what the threshold is in order to proc the 50% damage reduction, but basically how this works is what I'm going to understand it to be like. Let's say you're taking about 5 to 10% of your damage with an attack, then it's going to proc the 20% damage reduction, right? But if you get hit by a Dark Slash, for instance, from King Yimron, the first boss in Maw of Souls on a +10 Tyrannical, that does a ton of damage, and if you have Dampen Harm active, then that is going to reduce, that's going to proc the 50%. So really, really hard hitting attacks that do a lot of percent of your HP in damage are going to proc the 50% reduction, whereas smaller attacks are going to go variable between 50 and 20%. Basically, Dampen Harm is going to be really, really good for raids, also in some Mythic Pluses, although Healing Elixirs probably is going to be the better one for Mythic Plus, but we'll have to see. Mystic Vitality is very good for consistent magic damage. Row 90, Special Delivery, is passive. Every time you drink an Iron Skin or Purifying Brew, you have a chance to throw a keg up in the air. It's going to land down on the floor and do a lot of AoE damage, right? So basically just a free keg smash. You have a chance just every time you drink a brew, a Purifying or Iron Skin brew to be specific, to get a free keg smash. Like, that's just a lot of damage. The only problem with this though is that it's very inconsistent because it's only a proc 30% chance. So if you want more like consistent aggro and more just consistent damage overall, not more damage, but more consistent damage, then you can run with Rushing Jade Wind. Rushing Jade Wind is going to basically do this, right? Forgive the Tatsumaki, right? And it's going to just pulse out AoE damage, and it's going to pulse out AoE threat because you're doing AoE damage, right? This is really good for dungeons. Special Delivery is also good for dungeons because of how much damage it does, but is a lot better for single target and a lot better for raids just because you won't be needing Rushing Jade Wind in general. With the 4 set though, in Nighthold, Special Delivery looks like it could work very well in dungeons as well because we're just going to have a lot more brews to drink in general. Row 90, Invoke Nizao the Black Ox. This is a single target cooldown. Basically, you're going to summon Nizao, and he's going to do some damage. He can taunt bosses, whatever. He can stomp. It's not that great, though. Still, Special Delivery or Rushing Jade Wind is going to be the way to go. Mostly just ignore Nizao. Row 100, this is the most hotly debated row of the entire game, I think. High Tolerance basically is going to... Stagger is going to delay an additional 10% of incoming damage, and you gain up to 15% haste based on your current level of stagger. So like I said, we have 40% baseline stagger, right? High Tolerance is going to increase that to 50%, and Iron Skin Brew is going to add an extra 40. So most of the time in combat, we're going to have 90% damage, smoothing, damage, delay, whatever you want to call it, stagger, while running High Tolerance. And depending on the level of stagger, there's green, yellow, and red stagger. Depending on which one you're at, you're going to get a different haste value. So green is going to give you an extra 5% haste, yellow is going to give an extra 10% haste, and red stagger is going to be an extra 15% haste. So that's really, really, really powerful talent. Blackout Combo, this is a very, very, very interesting and complicated talent. So Blackout Strike, the ability that I mentioned where you just basically do a single target attack, Blackout Strike, this is going to give you a buff that empowers one of these next abilities. So Tiger Palm, Breath of Fire, Keg Smash, Iron Skin Brew, or Purifying Brew. This is a very, very, very expert level talent to run with. If you're not comfortable with the Brewmaster, do not run Blackout combo. It's very, very hard to maintain and really hard to just get the rotation down if you don't know how to play. So Tiger Palm, when you use Blackout Strike and you have the buff and you use Tiger Palm next, then it's going to increase the damage of Tiger Palm by 200%. If you use Blackout Strike and then Breath of Fire, cooldown of Breath of Fire will be reduced by 6 seconds. Keg Smash is going to be reduced the cooldown of the brews by an additional 2 seconds. Iron Skin Brew will pause your stagger damage by 3 seconds. So it's just going to pause damage intake from your debuff for 3 seconds. This is very powerful, but not used that often. Purifying Brew grants you a stack of Elusive Brawler, which is your mastery. Now, basically the gist of this is if you are comfortable and really, really expert level, you can ignore empowering Keg Smash and you can just empower your Tiger Palms and your Breath of Fire. But if you do not have the legendary chest and also you're not that comfortable with your brew management, then you're going to run Blackout Strike, then Keg Smash every single time, and then Blackout Strike, Breath of Fire every single time, and any other empty globals that you have, you can Blackout Strike and then Tiger Palm. You will not have to use it on Purifying Brew. It's actually the worst combo that you can do. Iron Skin Brew is okay, but only in certain situations. I would not recommend forcefully learning how to use it for Iron Skin Brew. Elusive Dance. Purifying Brew now clears an additional 15% damage delayed with Stagger. So your Purifying Brews have more weight to them. Instead of delaying 50%, instead of reducing 50% of the dot on Stagger, it's going to be 65%. It also grants you up to 20% dodge and damage done for 6 seconds based on the level of Stagger damage purified. So much how High Tolerance works with giving you haste, this will work with giving you dodge and damage done. So if you purify at red Stagger, you will gain 20% buff. If you purify at yellow Stagger, it will be significantly less. And if you purify at green Stagger, it will be even less. Alright, so now we're going to talk about stats. So Critical Strike, you have a chance for extra effectiveness on attack and heal. So basically you have a chance to do double damage on attacks, you have a chance to do double damage on healing. And also Critical Strike affects our proc chance for Celestial Fortune, which is we have a chance to be healed an extra 65% of whatever it is that healed us, right? Haste is going to affect our energy regen, it's going to affect our attack speed. It's also going to affect the cooldown on some of our abilities, mainly Keg Smash, Blackout Strike, Rushing Jade Wind, and Purifying / Iron Skin Brew. It's going to reduce the cooldown of those. So the more haste you have, the less cooldown those will be. And basically haste just acts as how comfortable are you with the rotation at certain levels of haste. If you really like very fast-paced gameplay, then run 30 to 33% haste. If you don't mind the slower gameplay and can manage the rotation, then you can run with lower haste, right? For instance, I'm running 13 to sometimes 18% haste. If I'm running High Tolerance, I get more haste. Versatility is basically just a flat increase damage and healing done by a certain percent. For my case, it's 2.79%. And is going to decrease the damage you take by half of that percent. So this is a very solid, just overall, basically it's main stat number 2. Everything that agility does besides the dodge chance, everything agility does, versatility does. So you can run with a lot of versatility if you can get it, and it's going to be pretty solid as well. Mastery is Elusive Brawler. It's that stacking dodge chance that we talked about earlier in the spellbook. Every time we get hit with a physical attack, then we have a stacking dodge chance until we actually do dodge. Avoidance, dodge, and parry, these are all just extra stats. You don't have to worry about those. So basically for stat priority, all right, the most agreed upon stat priority for survivability, right? For surviving, the most agreed upon stat priority, guys, is haste until you are comfortable with the rotation. Don't try and reach 30% haste. Don't try and reach 10% haste, whatever people tell you. Just fiddle with your own haste value until you feel comfortable with the rotation and your brew management, right? So get haste until you like it, then go for mastery, then go for versatility, slightly above crit, right? That's basically it, guys. So for survivability, you're going to want haste until you're comfortable, mastery, versatility a little bit over crit, and there you go. That's all you need. For DPS, if you're only worried about doing as much damage as possible, all right, then you're going to want to have haste until you are comfortable, but just know that the less haste you have, the more you can put into other stats, right? Which will increase your DPS, okay? So if you want as much damage as possible, run haste until you're comfortable, run mastery, then versatility, then crit, right? So that's the stat priority, right? For DPS, for survival, that's what it is. I will tell you guys that with the 4 set from Nighthold, haste does drop in value a bit because we will not need it that much for brew generation. However, haste is important to maintain a very comfortable playstyle with our rotation, because Blackout Strike and Keg Smash are very variable in how their cooldowns are with haste. So you really have to value how much you prefer the actual playstyle of the spec when you're running different haste values. Okay, so now while we're on the topic of stats and we're on the topic of tier sets, let's talk about the tier set for Brewmaster. So as you can see here, the 2 set for Brewmaster is Iron Skin Brew increases your stagger amount by an additional 5%. So like I said, we have 40% baseline stagger, and Iron Skin Brew adds an extra 40%. So we have 80% when we're running with Iron Skin Brew. This 2 set gives an 85% stagger amount because it increases it by 5%. And let's say if we're running high tolerance, then that means that we're going to have 95% stagger, guys. 95%. Now, the buff sounds small. 5% sounds very small, and it is very small, but the benefit is huge. Like I said, 90 to 95% is a very, very big jump. 80 to 85% is an even bigger jump, right? So really, guys, that is a very strong 2 set. The 4 set, though, is even stronger for us. So Tiger Palm reduces the remaining cooldown on your brews by an additional 1 second. Now we're casting Tiger Palm all the damn time, guys, because we never want to hit 100 energy. We never want to cap out. So we're going to use Tiger Palm a lot. And I mean a lot, guys. So the fact that Tiger Palm reduces the cooldown of our brews by 1 second, and with artifact traits it can proc to an extra second, so sometimes 2, then with our 2 set, with our 4 set, we're automatically going to have that reduction by 2 seconds all the time. So we're going to have so many brews for us to chug. And when it procs, it's going to go to 3 seconds. That's almost an entire Keg Smash worth of brew reduction just off of our 4 set. So guys, this is very powerful. It's definitely not necessity for Brewmasters to actually play. It's not required, but this definitely helps. And it's very, very awesome because we're going to be able to purify a lot more because we're going to have a lot more brews to work with. Now, as we're talking about gear still, let's talk about legendaries. So we have a lot of legendary changes that came with 715, and we also got 2 new legendaries that we're going to talk about. So fundamental observation, this got changed. Now what it does is Zen Meditation has a 50% reduced cooldown and is no longer canceled when you move or when you are hit by melee attacks, right? So this means that you can do everything that you want. The only thing that you cannot do while casting Zen Meditation is cast a different spell. Otherwise, it's going to cancel it. So this is a very, very potent cooldown. It's going to reduce the cooldown from 5 minutes to 2.5 minutes. So every 2.5 minutes, you can have a 60% damage reduction. You can't cast abilities for 8 seconds, but you can have a 60% damage reduction. This is going to be very powerful in raids, not so much in Mythic Plus though, because you're actually going to want to be using your abilities to do damage to the mobs, but 60% damage reduction on a very reliable cooldown, that is an insane buff. Very, 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 very good for raids. Pride as, this got a very big change for us as well. Every 30 seconds, we gain an Absorb Shield for 15% of our maximum health for 30 seconds. No longer do we have to wait so that we're not attacked. Just every 30 seconds, we are guaranteed a new 15% Absorb Shield of our health. So that is very strong. It's going to be very good for smoothing out our damage. We're already very good for smoothing damage, but Pride as helps with that. Is it the best legendary? No, but the effect is very solid, and also the fact that it gives us crit, haste, and mastery is very good. It's a very solid neck piece and legendary for us in general. Salabim's Lost Tunic. When you use Keg Smash, the remaining cooldown of Breath of Fire is reset. This is hands down the absolute best in slot legendary. Just hands down. It changes your rotation. It gives you 100% uptime on Breath of Fire, so you always have that 6% damage reduction rolling, and you have an increased DPS because you're always casting Breath of Fire. This is the best in slot, just legendary in general, guys. If you can get your hands on this, absolutely get one. I currently have one myself. I got very lucky, but if you don't have this, this is what you're going to be wanting to look for. Anvil Hardened Wrist Wraps are the new legendary that came in with 715. Each time you dodge or an enemy misses you, the remaining cooldown of your brews is reduced by 1 second. So this is pretty awesome because the higher mastery you have, the more this is actually going to proc, because you're going to be dodging attacks more often. Also, every time that you use your Exploding Keg, which is your artifact ability, for 3 seconds, those enemies cannot hit you. And every time that they swing, you're going to get your brews reduced by 1 second. So the power of this legendary increases exponentially the more mobs that are around to hit you. Okay, so let's say you have all your brews on cooldown and you don't have your Black Ox brew ready to go and you're tanking like 5 adds, let's say, then you can just throw your Exploding Keg on them and then they're going to miss for 3 seconds. That's going to almost get you like definitely at least one brew just right off the bat, maybe 2 even, depending on if they're attacking fast. So very, very good for dungeons, not as good for raids, just because bosses tend to swing pretty slowly. But for dungeons, it's a very powerful legendary. It's not required because we're already good enough with our brew generation, and our force set's going to make it better. But this is going to be really good if you want to ever run Elusive Dance. Now, Guy Plin's Soothing Sash is a belt. Purifying Brew instantly heals you for 25% of the purified stagger damage. This isn't the best because it requires you to purify, and we're not going to be purifying that often anyway. But if you ever do purify, usually you're going to need the heal from it. So you're not going to need the heal, but it's very nice to have that heal, because if you have to purify, that means that something went wrong or the healer can't keep up. So having that buffer of the extra healing is very, very nice. Synodaria the Symbiote, this is a new legendary that came in, not new actually, this got a buff, my bad. Your attacks cause an additional 30% damage to enemies above 90% health and heal you for 100% of the damage done. So not that great, but very good for single target AoE. Also, if there's new adds constantly coming in, this can help you with logs. If you're trying to get high damage, then you can do that as well. It's not that great for survivability, but it's a very nice legendary to have if you're working towards doing as much damage as possible. The Firestone Walkers, these also got a buff with this patch. Each enemy you hit with Breath of Fire reduces the cooldown of Fortifying Brew by 2 seconds, up to a maximum of 6 seconds. So really this only works on 3 targets for maximum benefit, but either way guys, every time you cast Breath of Fire, it's going to reduce the cooldown of Fortifying Brew by 6 seconds. That is awesome. That pairs very, very, very well with the chest piece, because you're going to be casting Breath of Fire all the time. So this allows you much more frequent use of Fortifying Brew than you would otherwise. But this is important to know, is that the only time that you can actually get benefit out of this legendary, besides the agility and the armor and things like that, the only time you can actually get benefit is if you have Fortifying Brew on cooldown. So you actually have to use Fortifying Brew in order to get the cooldown reduction from it. So make sure to actually press Fortifying Brew quite often if you have this legendary feat. Sifu's Secret got a buff with 715, successfully applying a loss of control effect to an enemy, which is basically a stun or a paralysis, things like that. Interrupting an enemy or dispelling any targets grants you 70% increased movement speed and 25% haste for 10 seconds. This effect may not occur once every 30 seconds. So this is not that great, because that much haste is quite a lot for us, and we're already GCD capped sometimes depending on the haste that you run. But either way, this basically acts as like a mini Bloodlust or a mini Heroism, Time Warp, things like that. This is pretty strong for dungeons, not that great for raids, but pretty strong for dungeons. And what you can do is purposefully run a low haste build and run Sifu's Secret to constantly proc this haste, and you're just always going to have 30% haste basically. So you can run things like Blackout combo and whatever. It's a nice DPS increase. It's not the best. You're definitely going to get more benefit out of other legendaries, but it is a very solid one for dungeons. Jewel of the Lost Abbey is going to increase the duration of stagger by 3 seconds. So basically stagger lasts 10 seconds. This is going to increase it by 3 seconds, which means that every tick of damage, so since it ticks every 1 second, then this is going to reduce the amount of damage that actually ticks per second, because it's going to be extended by an extra 3 seconds. So this is not true damage reduction, but it is the best legendary for damage smoothing, damage reduction, as you want to call it. This is very competitive with this trinket and Pride as, but overall a lot of people see this as the best in slot legendary for damage reduction. Archimonde's Hatred Reborn, this is the new legendary trinket that just came in with 715. Gain an absorb shield for 30% of your maximum health for 10 seconds. When the shield is consumed or expires, 75% of the damage is dealt to nearby enemies, split evenly with a 1 minute and 15 second cooldown. So you use this, you gain 30% of your health pool as a shield, and if the entire shield goes away and it gets consumed, then 75% of that entire shield is going to explode and deal damage to enemies evenly. This is a very, very nice single target burst trinket, also a very, very nice AoE target burst trinket as well. It's very good. I would definitely say that this is strong for mythic pluses and for raids in general, just because of the sheer amount of damage and the very short cooldown with a gigantic shield. Also, this is very nice for survivability as well. If I had to rank these in terms of what is the best, as I've said before, the chest piece is absolutely best in slot in every single occasion. The headpiece is very good for raiding. The neck piece is very solid. The trinket is good for dungeons and raiding. The finger is good for raiding and dungeons. I mean, all of them are basically very good. The only ones that I would say that are not that great are Sifu's Secret, Sinidaria, and the Waist. Those would be the only ones that I say aren't that great, but I would probably rank the Waist above the feet. I don't know. It's not a very solid list, guys, because really, if you get any of these legendaries, you're going to be very, very, very good. Okay, so now we're going to be going to the artifact weapon. So I already have my artifact weapon filled out, but more or less there is a optimal path, because I know that a lot of people are going to be rolling Brewmaster, and so they kind of want to know what's the best way to upgrade their weapon. I'm also going to go over the best relics. So you're going to start off with Exploding Keg, move your way down to Full Keg, go here, here, and make your way all the way over to Obstinate Determination. Right? The reason why you want this first is because cheesing gameplay with your health pool around 35% to get extra Ox Orbs is not necessary, but when you can pull it off, it's an expert level sort of Brewmaster tactic. When you can pull it off, it's very, very powerful. You actually don't even need a healer for some dungeons with this trait alone. So after you go around here and grab Obstinate Determination, you're going to roll down to grab Obsidian Fists, Overflow, and then Brew Stash. You want this first because the extra dodge is a very, very, very awesome, just extra mitigation that you can get by drinking Purifying Brew or Iron Skin Brew. Really, really awesome. Then after that, after you get Brew Stash, you're going to come down here and grab Dark Side of the Moon, Smashed. Then you're going to be grabbing Healthy Appetite and Swift as a Coursing River. After you get these all settled with, you're going to go and grab Dragonfire Brew, which is going to just simply increase DPS in general, right? Then you're going to go for Staggering Around and then Fortification. The Fortification Golden Dragon is not the worst, but it's not worth getting because you have to invest 3 points into Staggering Around, which is absolutely the worst trait for us. It just superpowers Fortifying Brew, and Fortifying Brew is already strong enough as it is. So to recap, we're going to go from Exploding Keg around here to Full Keg, around to grab Obstinate Determination, go back down here to grab Brew Stash, then rolling over here to Smashed, getting Healthy Appetite, Swift as a Coursing River. Then we're going to go and grab Dragonfire Brew and then finish off with Staggering Around and Fortification. After that, you're going to invest the rest of your points into Wanderer's Hardiness, which is just going to increase armor with every point that you grab. Now, the best relics, arguably, once you start to get more comfortable with how to play a Brewmaster, the best relics are going to be Facepalm and Hot-Blooded. What Facepalm does is Tiger Palm has a 10% chance per point or per rank to deal 300% of normal damage and reduce the remaining cooldown of your brews by an additional 1 second. So this is extremely potent for single target damage and also just for brew generation. It is RNG for brew generation, but it's pretty good. So you see I have a 50% chance. That's pretty spot on with RNG. Single target damage, this is the absolute way to go. If you want more AoE damage or you want more survival, then Hot-Blooded is actually the way to go. It's going to increase the damage of Breath of Fire, periodic and burning effect by 75%, and causes it to also reduce the target's damage done to you by 6%. So the higher this is, the less damage you're going to get. With the chest piece, the legendary chest piece, this is very, very powerful that you can get, but still Facepalm is mostly the best one. If you don't really care about damage, then possibly the best relics for survivability is probably going to be Potent Kick, just because it increases the duration, so you can probably purify more. I mean, it's not that great even, but if you can get your hands on it, definitely try and get Overflowing and Dark Side of the Moon. This is going to help your survivability a lot more than I would say Potent Kick. So those are the best relics. And that's the end of the artifact section. Okay, so the last thing I got to teach you guys how to play the Brewmaster with is the rotation. So there's certain rotations that you're going to be doing differently with different talents, and also I'm going to tell you guys exactly how to properly use Black Ox Brew, because there's a lot of people that don't know how to use this talent, and they think that light brewing is better or Gift of the Mist, whatever. You know, they don't know how to properly use it, right? So first of all, I'm going to start off exactly how you open up at the start of a fight with Black Ox Brew, so you guys get the best optimal Iron Skin Brew uptime as you can right off the bat. Okay, then after that, I'm going to go into the rotation. So to start off, we're going to drink 1 Iron Skin Brew, then we're going to Keg Smash to grab aggro, right? If you're not pulling the boss, then you don't need to do the Keg Smash, but you're going to Iron Skin Brew, Keg Smash, and then Iron Skin Brew, Black Ox Brew, Iron Skin Brew, and then go with your rotation. That gives you the most uptime on Iron Skin Brew as you possibly can. So if you guys ever get lost, I have the abilities that I press down here in the left side corner of the screen next to my health bar. So you guys can rewind, slow down the video if you want, and just make sure that you guys are on track with exactly what I'm doing. I'm also going to call out what I'm doing as well. So we're going to Iron Skin Brew, Keg Smash, Iron Skin Brew, Black Ox Brew, Iron Skin Brew, and then go in with our rotation. All right, and that gives us the most optimal play time or uptime on Iron Skin Brew. It looks like I drank an extra Iron Skin Brew by accident because I was pressing the buttons too much, but that's basically how you're going to be running this with. It's not that hard to maintain, and you see after that, since you have such a high uptime on Iron Skin Brew, you don't have to worry really about pressing another Iron Skin Brew unless you're going to cap out on brews or if this is about to fall off, obviously. So you can change it around that way. So now I'm going to show you guys how to do the rotation without defensives, right? With high tolerance. Okay, so this is not empowering any abilities with blackout combo. So the rotation that you're going to want to be doing the priority list with high tolerance is you're going to want to have Keg Smash at the top, then you're going to want to have Breath of Fire, Blackout Strike, then Tiger Palm, then things like Chi Wave and Chi Torpedo, whatever. You want to have those things after that. But you have to rearrange Tiger Palm in the priority list just to make sure that you never cap out on energy. Especially with high tolerance, it's very easy to not cap out on energy. So it's really, really bad if you do. All right. So what we're going to do is I'm not going to use defensives like Iron Skin Brew or anything. I'm just going to do the rotation. So we're going to open up with Keg Smash, and then we're going to Breath of Fire instantly, and then we're going to Blackout Strike and things like that. Also, I'm not using the legendary chest, so I will not get resets on Breath of Fire. Otherwise, your rotation does change slightly, and I will show you that afterwards. So we're going to Keg Smash, Breath of Fire immediately, then Blackout Strike, Tiger Palm, and then Blackout Strike, and then Tiger Palm, things like that. You don't really want to waste any of these. Well, I used a defensive by accident, but you really don't want to waste any of these, and you just want to maintain using your cooldowns as you should, and then not capping out on energy. It's really easy to never cap out on energy, especially with high tolerance, guys. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys the rotation with Blackout Combo. So with Blackout Combo, it changes a bit from high tolerance because you're going to want to use your Blackout Strikes to empower your abilities. So if you don't know how to really manage your brews that well, and if you don't know exactly how to play a Brewmaster in general, and you want to use Blackout Combo so you have enough experience with the class, then what you're going to want to do, the priority order changes. You're going to want to make sure that you empower Keg Smash with every single Blackout Strike that you can, right? So you're going to want to Blackout Strike, then Keg Smash, right? That's the top of the priority list. The next priority is Blackout Strike, and then Breath of Fire, and then Blackout Strike, and then Tiger Palm. You don't have to ever you don't ever have to empower Purifying Brew. That's the worst combo you can make. You can combo Iron Skin Brew sometimes, but it doesn't really do much for you. That's more of an expert level thing. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start off the fight with Keg Smash to establish aggro, and then we're going to Blackout Strike, Breath of Fire, so that we reduce the cooldown of Breath of Fire, so we can keep up that debuff as long as possible. So we're going to Keg Smash, Blackout Strike, Breath of Fire, and then Tiger Palm, just so that we don't get energy. Then Blackout Strike, Tiger Palm, Blackout Strike, then Keg Smash, and then Blackout Strike. Hold it. Breath of Fire. We probably could have, changed it up a little bit and things like that. My rotation changes a bit because I'm just ingrained to do the DPS one. But basically, you're going to want to empower every Keg Smash and every Breath of Fire. With the legendary chest piece, though, your rotation does change slightly because you do not have to ever empower Breath of Fire. You can only empower Keg Smash and Tiger Palm, because your Breath of Fire will be reset every time you cast Keg Smash, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to Keg Smash, then Blackout Strike, Tiger Palm, Breath of Fire, Blackout Strike, Tiger Palm, Keg Smash, Blackout Strike, Tiger Palm, Breath of Fire. Now, the reason why I'm not empowering Keg Smash in this instance is because you don't really need to, right? Once you get better with how to use your brews, you don't really need to. And this is with pretty low haste as well. This is, well, 17% haste. I'm not exactly, oh, it's coming from the chest piece, my bad. But yeah, so with the optimal rotation, if you want to make sure that you capitalize on Keg Smash uses, you're going to Keg Smash, then Blackout Strike, Tiger Palm, Breath of Fire, Blackout Strike, Tiger Palm, Blackout Strike, and then Keg Smash, and then Breath of Fire, Blackout Strike, Tiger Palm. See, it's a little bit different. Like, my rotation is so much different when not empowering Keg Smash, because you see, like, I'm holding Keg Smash for like a second or two. You know, that's not good to hold Keg Smash for that long, and you really don't need to hold Keg Smash in order to empower it, because you don't need the reduction that much from Blackout Combo. Blackout Combo you can use a lot better for DPS, but that is a more higher level Brewmaster play, so you don't really have to worry about it too much. Now, with the defensives and Black Ox Brew, I'm going to show you how to run it with Blackout Combo, which is, you know, basically the expert level play, whatever you guys want to call it. So we're going to Iron Skin Brew, then we're going to drink all of our brews, and then do whatever it is that we're going to do. So we're going to Iron Skin Brew, Keg Smash, and then go in. So Iron Skin Brew, Keg Smash, drink, Black Ox Brew, drink, and then go into rotation. Tiger Palm, Breath of Fire. This is with the legendary chest, by the way, right? I messed up a little bit because I was speaking, but yeah. So this is our rotation. This is basically the optimal DPS rotation, because we're empowering every single Tiger Palm that we can get, right? We're never letting Keg Smash even waste 1 second, because that is a DPS loss. And we're going to use our Tiger Palm empowered with Blackout Combo before we use Breath of Fire, because we already have the debuff ticking, so we don't really need to wait for it, right? So there you go. That's the optimal DPS rotation. I can show you the one for rushing Jadewind, but I will save that for a later video. So that's really it, guys. That's the rotation that you guys need to know for how to play a Brewmaster. And that concludes the end of the video. I really sincerely apologize that it was so long, almost an hour long for a guide, but unfortunately that's what it takes in order to get the best information out there for such a complex tank. And there's so much to say about this tank. I love it so much. But either way, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you please could leave a like and share this video around, I would greatly appreciate it. Also leave a comment down below and subscribe for further updates and for further guides on the Demon Hunter tank and the Guardian Druid tank. I'd greatly appreciate it for your support. So thank you very much, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.